The anime begins with an old man standing on the roof of a hospital, trying to invoke a spell by swinging his crutch, a spell to open a portal to another world. The nurse takes him off the roof because it is dangerous. A boy named Haru plays soccer and scores another point for his team. His friend, Yu, evaluates his moves. After the game, he comments to Haru that if he hadn't been rushed at the end and planned his moves better, he would have been more efficient in scoring more points and that it was frustrating to watch. Haru comments that if he played better, the number of fans would get out of hand. Katona, Haru's girlfriend, arrives and joins them. The three of them walk to a store, not realizing that a creepy guy was watching them. He begins to follow them. When they reach the store, Katona realizes that the place can only be reached by climbing stairs, making it impossible for Yu to join them because he is in a wheelchair. She tells them to go somewhere else, but Yu decides to let the couple have their walk and leaves, leaving his friends worried. Yu goes to his home, the flower shop of his Aunt Saki. He enters and goes straight to his room, lays down on the bed, and starts to think about Katona, realizing that he told Haru that it was frustrating to watch him play, but it was actually frustrating to see the girl he loves with his best friend. Meanwhile, the couple ends the tour with her feeling bad that Yu didn't go along. They say goodbye, and Katona goes on her way alone. A purple cloud comes up behind her and she realizes she is being followed. She runs and tries to call Haru but fails. She calls Yu for help and gives him her location. He rushes to her aid, asking his Aunt Saki for a ride, and tries to call Haru but he is distracted, choosing a birthday gift for her. Unable to talk to him, Yu runs looking for Katona, but when he finds her, she was already being attacked by the mysterious guy. He runs to save her, but it was too late. The subject had already stabbed Katona with a knife. Yu despairs seeing her wounded. When finally Haru appears, he even sees the guy running away, but he mysteriously disappears. Haru realizes that Katona was injured and Yu, without much balance because of his legs, struggles to type the number of the ambulance on his cell phone and desperately asks Haru for help. But he panics and picks up Katona to run himself to take her to the hospital. In his desperation, he carries her into the middle of the cars, trying to rush across a large avenue, and the next thing he knows, he is in the middle of the avenue with a truck coming towards him. Yu runs up to them and pushes Haru away. The two of them scream while lying in the middle of the avenue, when suddenly they appear in another world and realize that Katona has disappeared. A dog, if you can call it that, starts barking at them. Confused, they take a closer look at the place and realize that that world had different creatures than ours, where some people had animal faces. Yu gets up and Haru notices a miracle. Yu is walking. He no longer had a disability in his legs and could walk normally. They wonder where they were and Haru thinks about the possibility that those creatures are fantasies, but Yu evaluates and realizes that it's all too realistic to be fake and comes up with the theory that they must have stopped in another world. They deduce that Katona must have gone there too, but in a different place, and Haru is worried about how she must be because of her wound. But since Yu was able to walk, he thinks that maybe the wounds are healed in the world they were in and Katona is probably fine. They then start looking for her, with the little dog following them, and end up in a bar. Yu thinks about picking someone in the bar to ask if he has seen Katona when a man with a dog face starts talking to them. To take advantage of the opportunity, they ask the man if he has seen Katona. Half drunk, he asks them to describe her. They describe her by saying that she is a 17-year-old girl with short hair, and the woman at the bar comments that she is the same age as Princess Astrid. They look at a picture of the princess and realize that she has the same face as Katona and deduce that it is her. They rush to the castle to see Princess Astrid, thinking it is Katona who would have received this new identity upon arriving in that world. But, being ordinary citizens, the soldiers do not allow them to meet the princess. In the castle, we see that the princess was cursed by a spell, with her life hanging by a thread. The king, worried about his daughter, was getting worse and worse, as it was such a powerful spell that neither the best healers in the kingdom, nor Nis, the Minister of Magic, could do anything for the princess. Her last hope was the Order of Master Zelok, experts in undoing curses. The castle servants wondered how anyone had hurt the princess, since she was protected by the royal aegis, making anyone who hurt her pay with the same coin. When Master Zelok's order arrives, Yu and Haru take the opportunity to sneak into the castle. They then begin their work to save Astrid, but instead of being able to remove her curse, they are affected by it and explode to their deaths. With no hope of saving the princess, the king is devastated. As soon as the princess is left alone, the two of them run to her in doubt as to whether she really is Katona. Haru tries to save her but can't. But when Yu tries, he manages to pull out the dagger that was stuck in her, causing her curse. Leaving the soldiers confused of what had happened, Barton, one of the soldiers, questions what they were doing in the castle. They explain that the princess was quite similar to their friend and that they had come from another world, when Astrid appears alive and healed, making the king overjoyed. Nis, the Minister of Magic, takes Yu's hands to assess why he had managed to remove the dagger from Princess Astrid, while many had not. He then advises the king that he should show gratitude in some way to the two, since they had saved the princess. But Astrid did not seem to be Katona, not showing any knowledge of them. As they leave the castle with their rewards, Yu realizes that the commander Bertha was identical to his aunt Saki. They then return to the bar where they were and tell him that they saved Princess Astrid. Haru is worried about where Katona could be, while Yu is still wondering about Astrid. The two wonder how Yu managed to save her and Haru didn't, but Haru deduces that the whole thing was just a dream and that they just needed to wake up, when the woman from the bar offers the two a little room in the storeroom for them to spend the night. But Yu, not being sure that it was a dream, gets thoughtful about Astrid and decides to go to the castle to meet her again. Giving the guard the excuse that he forgot something of his there, he enters by going to the window of Astrid's hidden room. He watches her chatting freely with one of the castle workers, named Practical. He realizes that she also had a personality similar to Kotono, including her taste for sour oranges. Astrid eventually realizes his presence and recognizes that he was the guy who had saved her life. After they talk, Yu comments that she seemed like an ordinary person, and she says that she really didn't like to act like a princess much, acting normal when she was alone. She then invites him to go with her to the Lake of Purity, to eliminate any evil traces that may have been present in her body. The ship then begins to fly, surprising Yu. On the way, they pass several birds and she comments to him about divine birds, which are said to be allies of the heroes and that it was rare for them to appear to humans. Finally, they arrive at the Lake of Purity. After putting on her bathing suit, she enters the lake, causing it to glow with her presence and the entire surrounding forest to ascend. After diving in, she begins to do the magical healing dance, to purify her body, which causes her to stand up and begin to dance on the water until her scar, where the dagger had been stuck, is completely gone. Practical then goes off to get a medicinal herb to give her, leaving the two of them alone. Astrid then asks if she really looks like Katona, and he says that besides their looks, they were both determined and had the same taste for sour oranges, and that the only difference is that Katona and Haru are boyfriend and girlfriend. Astrid then realizes that Yu likes Katona. He explains that in the world he came from, there are no princesses. Astrid tells about a legend that says that the two worlds exist as one, like the two sides of a coin, and that they are connected some way. She comments that she felt like going to the other world because being a princess, Practical is the closest to a companion she has, feeling lonely and even unhappy. She felt that people were only loyal to the princess, but she couldn't be herself, and since her mother passed away when she was still small and the king was very busy, she had no one she could open up to, saying that she envies Katona for having him and Haru. She then jumps into the lake, and the two begin to have fun in it. At the castle, Nis comments to the king about the possibility that Yu and Haru are members of the Black Flags, an enemy of the kingdom, and that they saved the princess only to gain the king's trust, to get information that would help them win the war they were planning to wage. The next day, one of the castle guards arrives and invites the two of them to go for a sword fight, as another reward for having saved the princess. But as soon as they arrive, Nis says it is actually a mock fight for them to show the king their skills, making them realize that it was not a reward. When the fight starts, they dodge all the attacks with difficulty and Astrid appears, questioning why her father was attacking the people who had saved her. Haru is then surrounded by one of the soldiers, but Yu steps in front of him, defending him with his sword. The two realize that for some reason they knew how to use their swords and begin to take them all on, knocking them down and impressing everyone with the way they work together as one. But because they showed skills above the ordinary abilities of normal citizens, the king actually believes them to be spies of the Black Flags and has them arrested. The princess questions him, but Nis says they cannot risk the safety of the kingdom. Having nothing to do, Yu thinks that the trigger for them to change their world should be their lives at risk. So, having no other way out, they run into the fire to put themselves in danger and go through the flames, starting to fall, causing them to travel back to their world. The two wake up in the middle of the street and Katona appears as if nothing happened. Haru is thrilled to see her and, confused, asks if nothing had happened the day before. She comments that there was a terrible accident of a driver who slept at the wheel, suffering a crash that caused some deaths. Yu then realizes that the people who died were similar to Master Zelok's order, who had died after trying to take the curse off the princess. Yu remembers when he was a child and was in the hospital. He was talking to the old man with the cane who told him about the other world and how it was connected to this one. He said that some people have connected lives in both worlds, having two versions of themselves that look alike and tend to like the same things and have the same personality. Yu tells Haru that he believes that Katona and Astrid's lives were connected, and so when he saved her, Katona was also safe, and that the three who died in the crash accident were the same ones who died trying to save the princess. But Haru shows no interest in the theory, since Katona was fine, and to him that was all that mattered. Yu then goes back to the hospital looking for the old man. He had disappeared, but that was very common. Yu imagines that he must be in the other world, remembering when he was a child, the day before he was released from the hospital and asked to go to the other world with him. But he said that only heroes can go there, and that if someday he becomes a hero he can go. The next day at school, Haru and Yu discover that Katona had been absent due to health problems. Worried, they go to her and discover that she had a malignant tumor, with only 3 months to live. Yu then imagines that Princess Astrid was in danger again and this was causing the illness in Katona. But Haru thinks that it could be just the opposite. He deduces that Astrid should have died, and since you saved her, the universe was killing Katona instead, and to save her, Astrid should die. The mysterious guy who had attacked Katona earlier listens to Haru, determined to put an end to Astrid. As the two argue, he catches Haru, taking him to the other world. Haru then appears in a strange place in the Dark Castle. When a dark man named Galeroth says that he knew Haru could travel between worlds, and that legend has it that travelers have the power to save the world. He then explains that if a life destined to die is saved, someone in the other world ends up paying the price, and since Astrid was dying, she would need to die for Katona to be saved, and that he could use his power to do so. Yu also returns to the world to inform them that Katona was running out of life and that he was worried that Princess Astrid was in danger, but they assure him that she was safe and under protection. Noose questions where he got that their lives were connected, and he explains that they were very similar, just as Bertha was the same as his Aunt Saki. When Bertha arrives telling that she found out that the Black Flags were attacking and was together with Haru, leaving Yu desperate, he explains that his friend isn't really with them and that it was just desperation to save Katona, and assures her that his wish was to save Astrid's life. Noose then asks him to kill Haru and prove his loyalty to the princess. Haru goes to the castle along with Galeroth and his army to attack the castle, and says that he, as a traveler, must kill the princess to save the life of the girl he loves, and comments that since he thought it was all a dream, it shouldn't be hard to get someone killed. Astrid, thinking that she really was the reason Katona was dying, tells you that her mother had made a dagger using magic, and that protection spells had no effect with that dagger. She then asks you to kill her to save Katona, but he denies her, saying that he has no way of knowing how their connection is, and if she really needed to die to save Katona, and besides, it was wrong to take one life to save another, and that his wish was to save them both. The Black Flags advance, getting closer and closer to the castle, and a war begins, with Haru continuing to be encouraged by Galeroth to kill Astrid. Meanwhile, in the castle, Yu is preparing for battle, being willing to fight Haru to save Astrid. Haru begins to fight and realizes that the sword he was using amplified his power, making him stronger and more powerful. He then rushes to fulfill his plan to kill the princess, when Galeroth says from afar that he will take the life of the one he loves with his bare hands. Astrid comes to her father and tells him that it might be time for them to use the Mornstar, a sacred sword that could defeat the enemy. But the king confesses that the sword was not kept in their vault and the one in the vault was a fake. The king explains that his father used the powers of the sword to defeat Baladon, his brother, but since then the sword has disappeared because his father abused its power. In the war, Yu fights when Haru finally arrives. He tries to stop him, but their difference of opinion on how to save Katona continues and they begin to fight. Yu defeats him and asks them to stop fighting, but Haru continues to insist on killing the princess. The two then attack each other, questioning how they were about to kill their best friend. Haru remembers when he was a child and ended up enraging an angry dog. He ran from the dog, but ended up running into a dead end, being attacked, when you appear to protect him. Ever since he was a little boy he already had the determination to protect others. After being rescued, Haru asks him what happened to his legs and he explains that he was in a plane crash when he was a baby and was the only one to survive. And so, after that day, they became inseparable friends. Yu shows up at the hospital and sees a news report of a place that was on fire and realizes that it was similar to the place where the castle was being attacked. He then goes to Katona and finds Haru, who had also gone to see her. He says that she had gotten worse and was in a lot of pain and the doctors had sedated her. Yu then says that the closer they get to Astrid, the worse Katona gets, but Haru keeps insisting that killing her was the solution. Suddenly, Yu remembers that Bertha had fallen in the battle and worries about his Aunt Saki. She was being attacked by the mysterious guy, but Yu arrives just in time to save her. They then drive away and the guy turns into a giant spider and chases after them. She then comments that the guy called her Aunt Saki, and she found it strange because only the two of them called her that. Yu then finally understands who was behind everything, but they are caught by the spider and in the confusion, they end up losing control of the car, falling into the lake, and going to the other world. Yu then arrives at the castle and accuses Nis of being the traitor. He explains that the criminal who attacked the princess knew about the princess' protection with the royal aegis, otherwise, he would not have used a bewitched dagger, making him realize that whoever attacked her could only be someone close. Also, the assassin went after Aunt Saki, knowing her nickname, and there was no way for a person from that world to know about his aunt other than those who were present when he mentioned her to the king. Also, he says that when Nis touched his hand earlier, he noticed that they smelled just like the cursed dagger. He laughs, thinking it ridiculous to be accused because of a simple smell, but Astrid says that magic smells and leaves traces on those who practice it. She says that whoever cursed her must have scars all over the body left by the royal aegis, and to prove his innocence, all he had to do was show them his body. Haru remembers that Galeroth knew about him, thinking that world was a dream, as if he had heard him say it in the castle, And Bertha also says that the enemy always acted as if he knew the kingdom inside and out. When she appears, Yu is relieved to see her well, meaning that Aunt Saki was also safe. Nis being discovered confesses to actually being the enemy, the leader of the Black Flags, Galaroth. He also reveals himself to be Prince Sedulus, who had returned from the dead using alchemy, forging a new body for himself. His father had abandoned him in the enemy kingdom of Beladon when he was a child, and after years, his father attacked the enemy kingdom, killing him and his family. But he says he was not seeking revenge, but the power the princess possessed. Since the princess was protected by the royal aegis, causing everyone who hurt her to receive the same, he bewitches Haru into killing Astrid. Haru begins to be controlled and tries to attack the princess, with everyone fighting to stop him. With Astrid's life at risk, in the other world, Katona gets even worse, having to go in for emergency surgery. Yu struggles to stop Haru when magic suddenly comes out of his hand that ends Galaroth's spell. But, he himself, dodging everyone, captures Astrid. To hurt her without being hurt back, he attacks the castle, making several pieces of it fall. Yu runs to protect her and a sharp piece falls through his chest. The two, furious, try to attack Galaroth, but can't. When the old man appears to Yu and hands him his crutch, saying that he has spent years looking for a hero worthy enough to use such power, he leaves and returns to his world. Galaroth turns into a giant monster and captures the princess, then attacks Haru. Yu appears defending his friend with his crutch, struggling to stand, but determined to save everyone he loves. With his determination, the crutch is transformed into the missing sacred sword, healing Yu's wound. Galaroth rises to the top to suck out Astrid's powers without interruption. To save her, Yu asks the divine bird for help, which lifts him upward. With the help of the bird, he attacks Galaroth, rescuing Astrid. A fight between the two begins, but after being wounded by the sword, Galaroth attacks Astrid with his magic. Yu runs to protect her and Galaroth takes advantage and attacks him. When he realizes that Yu was not with his sword, he leaves it behind for Haru to pick up. He then hits Galaroth with one blow and the sword begins to glow, causing him to disintegrate. With his death, the enemies retreat, ending the war. The king says that he hopes his brother finds peace and that they should learn from this to build a future without war. Princess Astrid then explains that Haru and Yu are only able to travel between the worlds because of Galaroth's powers, and with his death, the gate that was still open and shining would soon close and never be opened again. She bids Yu farewell, saying that she wanted him to be the person she could open up to and share her moments with, but he could not stay because legend said that if people from the other world stayed there too long, it could be fatal. The two then leave for the portal, but Yu, not wanting to leave Astrid, lets go of Haru's hand. He then wakes up in the hospital and starts looking for Yu everywhere. He meets up with Aunt Saki, who tells him that he was unconscious for a month after they fell into the river. He then finds out that Katona was fine, thanks to her surgery, where they were able to remove all the tumor, with the doctors saying it was like a miracle. Haru, overjoyed to hear that she was cured, but still not knowing where Yu was, tells them to go tell him about Katona's recovery. They get excited to tell Yu, when suddenly, they start to forget who he was. Haru then finally understands. He was Yu. They looked alike and loved the same person. Yu was a traveler and had ended up in Haru's world when he was a baby, and so they ended up having to share the same life, loving the same girl and the same things, becoming best friends. But Haru realized that they should live in different worlds, and he felt closer to Yu than ever and knew somehow that he was in the other world, alive and well, with Astrid, the girl he loves, just as he was with Katona, each one in the world that should exist. Guys, what was that plot in the end, huh? Comment down here what you thought of this ending. And I ask you please to hit the like button below this video. We are still very small. We really need your support subscribing to this channel. Thanks, guys. Take care.